and move on. All right. So anyway, I don't want to get off on that too long because we can do the whole show on that. FBArmy.com/war room. Are you guys hearing a buzzing in your? Oh no, that's Lance. Go ahead, Lance.
Hey, I mean, so all right, so we got two prophetics on the program. So let me answer. That's an interesting question.
Of course.
What insight about handling prophecy? The thing that I'm thinking about a lot these days is, remember when Peter was getting a revelation regarding his whole future from Jesus, right on down to his death. And you'll stretch forth your hands, and another will take you where you would rather not go, and this signified by what death you would glorify God. And Peter was so jazzed over this prophetic insight that he says, what about him? And he right away starts getting, this is like he's constantly going in the wrong direction. That's why I love Peter. He says, what about John? Because he wants to know what's going to happen to him. How's he going to die? What's going to go on? And Jesus says to him, hey, if I will that he's here till I come, what's that to you? Follow me. So let me just give this thought. Pakistan and India, two nuclear powers, look like they're on the brink of war. China and the United States, Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East, Iran trying to get a nuke. We're living in the last days, Flashpoint. So remember this, there's wars and rumors of wars, but you're not supposed to be troubled by things that don't apply to you. It's important to know what's going on. The tendency is we get all into the prophetic, what's going on. Right. You don't really have a lot of influence over the globe, but you have a responsibility for you. So what Jesus would say, I think, is important, is it's good to be informed, but don't fix your focus on the turmoil of global events. What's that to you? You follow me. The most important prophetic words are the personal ones that direct our steps, and that's the ones we should focus on.
No, I agree. Good word, good word. All right, so there you go. Go sign up, fparmy.com/war room. You can get all the information there you need. Join thousands of others. And we'll be sending emails out on a regular basis. We're not going to just bombard your email box with junk. That's not what this is about. So you want to be a part, go sign up. Now, let me tell you some other housekeeping things before we jump in here with Rick Green. We had a YouTube channel. We were sharing YouTube with the Victory channel. So if you're on the Victory channel, you're watching the show live, that's great. But nothing else is going to be there. Once it goes off the air, it's done. So we have established a new YouTube channel strictly for Flashpoint. And you can find out all the information. Go to fparmy.com/YouTube, and you can click on the link there. So I would suggest all of you that like to watch it live, go over there and get on the YouTube Flashpoint, the official one, and that way you won't ever be left out. And, of course, there's always the Rumble page where you can follow along with us. You can always watch there at rumble.com/Flashpoint and be a part of what we're doing. All right, let me bring in Rick Green. Hello, Rick. Glad you're here tonight.
Hey, Gene, you're not going to ask me about prophets? What? Just because they're prophets, you ask them. What about, I'm like the layman on the program, right?
Yes.
So, like, what's the layman?
Yes. Yeah, you and I. So. You and I see, yeah. I am prophetic because I knew you were going to say that.
Hey, I'm telling you, these guys have brought me along. And look, I grew up Pentecostal. I've seen it all. But I came in a bit of a skeptic a couple of years ago, 3 years ago when I started coming on Flashpoint. And it hit me at one point. It finally hit me. It's like, when you read the Bible and you look at all the prophets in the Old Testament, they were kind of weird too. So these guys are my kind of weird. Hank's my kind of weird with the dad jokes and the funky shoes and, the comedy and the impressions. And Lance is my kind of weird with the seven mountains and the application, personally, what he just said. And so I just want to say to all the critics out there and the skeptics out there, everything these guys have said has happened. I mean, it's just been like over and over and over again. So I've gone from the kind of not non-believer, but just, analytical, kind of stay back a little bit and skeptical a little bit, sure. Just kind of want to watch, to the point that these two guys right here in the middle of the screenshot, when they talk, I listen now. And it's been remarkable what God's spoken through them and then done in our country. So anyway, that's the layman, maybe started off a little bit of a skeptic guy. It's just amazing to watch what God's done here.
Yeah, it is. In fact, let's get into tonight's show with some topics. I want to show you this first video. Stephen Miller talking about the right of due process. Watch this, and we'll get into some topics. Watch.
This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country. the DEA seized 11.5 kilos of fentanyl, including an astounding approximately 3 million fentanyl pills, the largest seizure in our nation's history. These are the pills in the bags right there. The main bottom right, the head of this organization, Sinaloa organization, here in the country illegally, 6 of these guys and women here in the country illegally. His name is Alberto Salazar Amaya. He is the leader, and he was living in Salem, Oregon. With him, they got millions of dollars, cash, cars, but the drugs were in Albuquerque, Phoenix, and Utah. That's how insulated these drug dealer cartel leaders make themselves.
Amazing. All right, I pitched to the wrong video. My fault. But listen, Lance, you hear what they're saying about the drug cartel. This was a huge seizure. But I think what's shocking about it isn't just the fact they got the drug, but that the cartel's here in America hanging out.
And the reason why this is important is that the DOJ is working a real optics campaign against the legacy media and the Democrat Party and the deep state, which is doubling down on blocking the president's ability to deport illegals. What they want to do is they want to say, oh, you have no business being here. You got here illegally. But once you're here, you have the right to an attorney and to 2 years worth of time while we vet you to explain why we're kicking you out. And so what the DOJ is doing here is they're saying, hey, we're going to show you the evidence of cartels, of terrorist organizations, of drugs. But understand that the strategy behind this is they're saying we could be focusing on a lot of things in America, but we're making the argument that we have already been invaded and the president has a right to kick this stuff out. That's the real media game that's going on with the White House right now.
Yeah, all right, Pastor Frank, let me get you weigh in on that. I mean, the cartel, I mean, sure. This is a massive, but this is just the beginning. We got so much more to do. Your thoughts?
Well, thank you. I think of a couple things on this, and you know, fentanyl has been a horrible thing in our country. It's killed so many people, and it has to be stopped. But again, to Lance's point and yours, the open border brought all of this in. But here's what's happening. You know, this is what happens when light begins to shine. It causes darkness to begin to be exposed and to be expelled. So God is shining his light on this country. He's getting involved. We're seeing law and order. Lastly, I think there has been how so many things were just, falling apart. You could just see the spirit of death. And I think this is another proof that God is injecting his life and America is being saved.
Amen. It is being saved. And you know, I want to, this next clip is proof that your prayers are working. A few months ago, we would have never thought we would see people self-deporting from America. But I bet you didn't think, like I didn't think, that we would be paying people to go. Watch.
To you. So Fox News can report exclusively that DHS will announce today that they're going to start paying for the commercial flights of illegal aliens who self-deport from the U.S. And on top of that, they're going to pay them an additional $1,000 stipend once they're confirmed to have left the country. Now, DHS says doing this is going to be significantly cheaper for the American taxpayer. They tell us that right now it costs on average about $17,000 to arrest, detain, and deport someone. They say paying for self-deportations and the stipend will only cost about $4,500 per person. That's about 70% cheaper. Aliens are going to have to register to self-deport on the new CBP Home app to access that DHS financial assistance, as well as announce their intent to leave the country. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem tells Fox in part, quote, "If you are here illegally, self-deportation is the best, safest, and most cost-effective way to leave the United States to avoid arrest."
Okay, so this is another reason, Rick, we have such a high debt in America. When it costs you $17,000 to get rid of someone that doesn't belong here, it's just crazy. I don't know where they're spending that much money per person to get them out. And on the other side, I love the creativity of this administration going, hey, we'll give them some money and they can still go and we make money. We get out cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic math, right? I love the fact that they've come up with this plan because, Gene, what that doesn't even show is if they don't self-deport and we don't catch them and get rid of them immediately, how much are they costing us in addition to that? How long are they on government assistance in some ways? You've already exposed with several other Flashpoint programs how much money is being spent on housing and even Social Security that they're getting and health and all of those things. So it's a tremendous amount of savings. So it's just basic math to make that decision. Very smart to do so. On the previous deal with the whole thing with Mexico and with the cartels, isn't it nice to have an attorney general who is having a press conference to talk about kicking out rapists, murderers, drug dealers, those kind of folks, instead of going after praying grandmas, who, by the way, the praying grandmas here at the campus this week, so I'm thinking about this, like, instead of going after these J6ers and these good people that were just trying to be good patriots, isn't it nice how different it is to have the DOJ going after actual criminals? And I'll say this to what Lance was saying about kind of the strategy and behind the scenes as well. I also think this is a setup. The Mexico said, no, we don't want you to come in and help us with the cartels. Okay, well, we played nice. We asked you. But listen, these people keep invading our country, keep coming across our border, keep conducting illegal operations in our country. I don't think Donald Trump needs their permission. I think he's going to unleash on these cartels at some point. So all of this is playing towards that. I think Lance is exactly right about the media. What's the right word I'm looking for? But the combating of the media narrative so that Trump can do these policies and keep the American people with him.
All right. So now let me show you. Now let's go to Stephen Miller, talk about the right of due process. This is good. Watch.
Today is May 5th, and that means Cinco de Mayo, Wolf, a holiday that celebrates Mexico's victory over France. But some, in the Battle of Puebla, I should say, but some communities have canceled or scaled back cultural events because of President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration and the fear among many Latinos that they could be arrested.
So here's what he said. The right of due process is to protect citizens from their government, not to protect foreign trespassers from removal. Due process guarantees the rights of a criminal defendant facing prosecution, not an illegal alien facing deportation, Lance. I mean, come on. Come on.
Right.
I like Stephen Miller dressing like a Mexican with that hat. I think the Trump team is really thinking about how to reach America at all kinds of levels.
Hey, Gene, I do want to say on the due process thing, I think David Barton said something really, I think it's poetic and poignant, and that is, he said it's we the people of the United States, not in the United States. So you don't get all of our constitutional protections because you broke into our nation illegally. If you are of the United States, meaning you are a citizen of the United States, then you get all these protections. I know this is an ongoing debate among constitutional scholars and all of that, but it should be that simple. It should be, you come here illegally, you break the law to come here, we're not going to give you 2 years of trial like what you were talking. Yeah. You don't get all of that. Now, if Congress passes a law and says, when we deport, we're going to get a quick hearing with an immigration judge, we're going to get a quick look at this, at least some cursory information, but it can be done in an hour and then get them on a plane and get them out of here. That's fine. We can comply with that. But the idea that we're going to let them manipulate our system and stay here for years, that's over with Trump being here.
All right, Pastor Hank, you had something I'll let you.
Yeah, well, as I'm listening to this, I don't mean to be a skeptic. I don't think in 4.5 years I've been a skeptic. But, when I'm looking at this, self-deportation, here's how you do it. I really don't think that the real hardcore criminals or even the criminals are going to say, oh, that's a great idea, and I'm willing to get what they offer them, to go back to my country. Most criminals and those that have criminal intent, the whole reason why they came here is not because they were looking for a better life. Criminals, it's about their heart. Jesus said, murder and everything is in the heart. And I just don't see them. They like to hide out. They like to continue to do what they're doing. It's kind of like cockroaches, and I just don't see them lining up going, great idea. So I would rather see some kind of effort to put our money together and crack down harder on really finding these people and getting them out however we need to. But I don't buy the whole thing. Here's how you can self-deport. I think maybe some people who feel bad about being here and want to come back potentially in the future the right way may take them up on it. But I don't think the real criminals, in my opinion, are going to do it.
Oh, I agree with you. I don't think the real criminals are, but at least to get some of those people that are possibly here for the right reason and go, I really do want to be here. I'll go do it the right way this time, since Joe Biden's not in charge. So I agree with you, though. But
so maybe I'm confused. I don't know. Maybe I'm confused. I don't mean to. Maybe I'm confused in how this has been presented. So
no.
But anyway,
there's they're still going after. This isn't in lieu of. This is as well as. You're still going after.
It's both and.
Yes, both ends.
Yeah, we're doing both, right? And I think, Hank, the ones that'll do this are the non-criminal part. I mean, yes, they broke the law to come into the country, but it's honestly, in some cases, it's going to be some of these families and others that just came here to work or whatever, and they're like, well, if I do get arrested and have to go through that's going to be a lot worse. I'm just going to go ahead and go back, and I'll take that $1,000 and you pay for my flight. I'm out of here. So that could be millions that will be like that. But to your point, the criminal element, they're not going to be the ones that sign up for this. They're the ones we're going to have to go in and do what Kristi Noem and the rest of the team has been doing. But I think it is both and for sure.
Yeah. All right. Let me show you what Steve Miller said about the Democrats, the current state. Watch.
What are some of the things that Democrats have been doing that have turned you off and that make you say the party needs to be purged? Who needs to be purged from it, first of all? Do you have any names?
Well, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to do that to a lot of people. But we know who the extreme left is. We know how they go about operating. We know what we lean towards when it came to open borders. We know that the spending was excessive, even though it's excessive on the Republican side as well. I think a $37 trillion budget. When Republicans try to act like it's just the Democrats, that's not true. But the Democrats certainly shouldn't be absolved from blame in that regard. Certainly with identity politics, woke culture, cancel culture, I thought that was something that ravaged our nation psychologically, because you had people literally scared they were going to lose their jobs if they pronounced the wrong pronoun, for crying out loud. It got that bad, and I think that's one of the reasons that Donald Trump is in office today, because so much stuff, a lot is focused on the individual as opposed to actual policies itself. I'm talking about what they preached and what they talked to the American people about, more so than what they're doing. The kind of messages that they were disseminating was incredibly uncomfortable to listen to and to hear, and I thought that it wasn't emblematic of what most Americans are thinking about. They're trying to pay their mortgages, rent, buy food and groceries, pay gas, and deal with the prices, the cost of living, and they want safety in the streets. That's primarily what most American citizens are about, trying to live in peace and harmony, and that's not something that I think either side has promoted along the way, and that's why I think the state of the nation is what it is at this particular moment in time.
All right, Lance, sounds to me like a Republican right there.
Well,
that's what we've been saying.
Well, look, CNN, who are they going to put on, to go? Certainly not Stephen Miller. Have you ever heard him? That guy's like a flamethrower. So, Stephen Smith is kind of like a recent convert to rational Democrat dialogue. And what he's representing is the fact that if the Democrats have any hope of recapturing political stature, certainly at a presidential level, they can't do it with Crockett and AOC and Bernie Sanders. They've got to move towards a more moderate posture. The danger is they'll get a moderate person in speech, like a Newsom, who will actually govern like a Biden. And but we don't have to fight that battle now. We've got midterms coming up. But I would say that this thing with the deporting, I just want to keep our head clear on this. We are nowhere near 10 million illegals that came in under Biden. I mean, we can't even get cartels out without due process. We have got to have a revolt against the tyranny of the judiciary asserting its power. And you're seeing a lot of these cases. I mean, Rick Green probably sees it, where it's a lot about jurisdiction is the argument, where the judiciary is making the argument, oh, we have a lunatic king, a despot, a totalitarian Trump. We have to restrain him. We've really got a spiritual warfare battle. We've got to break that narrative off of America's mind so that
we're not seeing any real movement here. In fact, if anything, we're seeing more of the same, if not more.
Yeah, I think Newsom's trying to pull a Bill Clinton, be essentially likable and affable and visit with people like Charlie Kirk and others, but his policies are still going to be incredibly leftist, and I just don't think he's as good as Clinton was. He's too plastic, so he's not as good at winning people over, with the aw shucks thing that Bill Clinton was able to do. But I think that the clip you played of Stephen Smith on CNN, I mean, first of all, I love watching Jake Tapper just sit there in pain. Could you tell? I mean, he just on his face, it was painful for him to have to listen to Stephen Smith point out the absurdity of the Democrat Party that Jake Tapper has given cover for the last 4 years. But I think Smith, I think you're right. I think he was saying a lot of things Republicans would say. And I think it's the Bill Maher effect. I think it's the people on the left that intellectually said this just can't go on. This has gone way too far, and they're trying to pull their party back to the center. But I don't know the answer to your question as far as whether or not they'll do it in time or that they'll find the right standard bearers that can be the voice of the party. That's going to be That's going to be the tough one for them. I don't see anybody out there that has the talent of a Bill Clinton that can market their party to the American people, and then, like Lance is saying, they would still govern left, but they would package it in this moderate thing. And then last thing I'll say to what Lance was saying, I do think Trump has a chance to make one of the major issues in the midterms the judicial tyranny that's happening right now, and then the jurisdiction question that he raised. If Trump continues to pound everything that he's trying to do, I think that has to be a major issue going into the midterm, so that Congress will then back up the president, not only make it something where we can win the midterms on it, but in that last 2 years of the Trump administration, reset the table and put the court back in their proper place and have Congress and the president be the ones making policy for our country.
Well, I want to go back before I go to Lance here, before we go to break. I'm going to Lance the last comment here. But I think America has changed since the bill. I agree that Bill Clinton had a certain charm. He was able to con a lot of people what he was really doing. But I think Americans have changed in a very big way. I would like to think we're a lot smarter. We've gone through a lot since the Clinton years. So we're a lot more suspicious and skeptical of this. And so I don't think we're going to be that way. But there are always those that will follow blindly a party off the edge of the cliff and not question when something doesn't go right. All right, Lance, last word before the break.
Don't underestimate the power of the spiritual awakening that is behind the clearing of the fog off of America. We aren't quoted as vigorously as the New York Times and the Washington Post, etc. But the average American is listening to a Flashpoint. They're listening to other sources of news rather than the legacy news that dominates the quotable segments we do when we do news analysis. And the populist movement is formidable, growing, and winning. What's happening with young people, with young men in particular, is a sociologic phenomena. They're moving towards a direction. Gen Z is absolutely rejecting the AOC platform. The data is out, and they're pulling their hair out now. The James Carvels are going nuts because they're seeing they're losing the next generation. Normally, the radical youth are with them, but they're looking nutty on college campuses, and young men are going, that's not my future.
All right, well, we're going to continue to watch what happens, and you're going to watch right here with us. All right, before we're going to go to the break, you need to stick close to me down there.
I will. I'm going to be looking forward to rolling with some Tide. I'm going to make sure all my clothes are clean with Tide before I get there, and we're going to see God move. It's going to be powerful. Hey, Gene, I really do, in all seriousness. When I was walking out to meet people, you know what they said to me? It was so amazing. They said, we have been watching Flashpoint for 4 years. Some said 3 years. But they said this was the first event they went to, and they said, we're coming to more. There is nothing like a live event. They said you could just absolutely feel God, and you can feel the movement that we've been talking about. It's really, really special.
It is special. So I want to see you in the room. That's where the magic happens. I don't think you should say magic with a church service. But anyway, it's a lot of fun, and you want to be there. Now, Lance isn't going to be there, so this is what I need you to do. Bring all your Lance Wallnau books, and I will sign them. Bring them all. We'll sign them. I'll get Hank to sign it. Even, if we catch Rick before he goes to eat somewhere, we'll get him to sign it. We'll have a good time because Lance has decided that there's something more important than being with us on that day.
Who knows what it is? Who knows what it is? It could be. I'll have to look into my schedule and see what in the world could possibly be more important. Flashpoint with Gene Bell.
There you go. Thank you. That made me feel good, Lance. Thank you for that.
Hey, Gene, he needs to know, Lance, people are asking, where is Lance? It's almost like that cartoon figure. Where's Wally or whatever his name is? Lance, we're going to have to write a book about you.
Where's Wallnau?
People keep saying it.
I want to know about this Hank buying people lunch.
I know. Hank does. He's bought, probably hundreds of people lunch. No, I'm kidding. He hasn't done that.
Thank you for straightening that out.
Yeah,
I'll buy you lunch, Lance, if you show up. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Let's move along. All right. Oh, by the way, listen, if you did miss us at the top of the show, we got our own YouTube channel. Go Flashpoint, fparmy.com/YouTube, and go sign up. Follow us on that. Share this program on all of your websites, all of your social media sites, and let's continue to get the word out. Everywhere you're watching us now, we're going to hopefully stay right where we are. And so we'll continue to broadcast there, and we're going to keep expanding. We've got some great things in the hopper for you that we're going to see some great expansion coming to Flashpoint, that we can get more out there sooner. All right, so let's go to this Trump's economic agenda. What is that all about?
I looked back at the production, industrial production, put out by the Fed. That is strictly domestic production. First quarter, almost the same number, 21%. So I'm saying, no. Business is looking forward to retroactive tax cuts, 100% depreciation, maybe a 15% made in America. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's all correct, Larry. President talked about it the other day at the White House.
Yeah.
He wants to see 100% expensing for the next 4 years. That would be a boon to businesses large and small in the United States. You couple that with the fact that GDP print that you talked about, consumer spending up year over year, up about 2%. Mm-hmm. What did decrease? Government spending. Mm-hmm. But surprise, surprise, Republicans are coming and doing the responsible thing, cutting spending where we need to, because to your point about interest rates at the top, if you really want to get your intermediate to long-term rates to be in a more favorable position, that's not even on the Fed. That's on Congress. Congress has to control the purse. If you can control the velocity of borrowing, it puts downward pressure on Treasury yields going into the future. That will stabilize rates in the United States, makes goods more cost effective for businesses and for families over the long term. That's the economic recipe that Donald Trump is taking us to. For the people who, want to be fearful of current tariff policy, give the president an opportunity to put the entire agenda in place. In short, let him cook and then see what comes out the other end.
All right, Lance, let him cook and see what comes out the other end. How much is really, now, obviously there's the factual side of this, but, there's that whole consumer confidence that came right behind Trump. As soon as the win happened, everybody rallied. Businesses started excelling. Gas prices dropped. I mean, how much does consumer confidence play in all of this compared to what's really happening in the economy?
The battle we've had, Gene, for 8 years has been, and we've seen it, against principalities and powers that control media. Media is, as we have said, as Hank has said, they are the false prophets of Baal. The Wall Street Journal is constantly saying, oh, he's leading us into a depression. We're going into a meltdown. We're going into the breakdown. Donald Trump is addressing a $36 trillion debt. Washington doesn't have the courage to ever tell a single constituent, we're not going to give you more sugar or more carbohydrates. So Donald Trump is doing a high wire act. He's trying to reset the entire global economy, bringing investment back. It will take time to get manufacturing and jobs back going. You've got Jamie Raskin. I'm sorry for this. There's a nut job in New York warning all the countries that are negotiating with Trump in order to bail us out in a sense of our debt structure so that we could be the global force we can be for the whole world to prosper. He says, whoever does business with Donald Trump, we're going to put you on a list, and when we come to power, we will punish you. In other words, we want you to bring America down so that we could take power. We need to be praying for India, Japan, or South Korea, possibly Germany, to come to the table within the next 30 days, because the moment one or two, I'm talking to the Flashpoint people, no one else will get this prophetic intelligence except for us. We have 30 days to bring a big country in to the place where they negotiate with Trump and arrive at a trade deal, so the other countries realize the musical chairs is going. Move before the music stops. Get into Washington and get your deal. That's the way that America is going to be able to recover quickly and get into the transition Trump is trying to create.
All right, but Lance, let's talk about Jamie Raskin and the example you just pointed to. What is he saying? Because all I hear is the part you said, but what's his reasoning? Why, what possible good reason could there be for doing that? Other than the nefarious reasons we all know. But is that what he's saying?
Here's what he's saying. He's saying, let's take out El Salvador. So President Bukele is now chums with the agenda, and you're going to see that these are like the sheep nations that are the sovereign nations. Bukele said, you export these dangerous people. Venezuela won't take them. Put them in our maximum security prison. We'll charge you a lot less than it costs for you to have them in an American prison, and we'll work with you. And so Jamie Raskin said, any country that cooperates with Donald Trump is going to be on a list that we will punish when we come back to power. In other words, don't do a deal with Trump. Stretch out the agony of this transition in America so that we can capitalize on it in the midterms, and you'll get a better economic deal. And so it's demonic as hell that we have saboteurs, Judases working within our own government, and a large part of the Democratic Party goes along head nodding because they could care less if America goes down so long as they go up.
And that's the real tragedy of all of this. All right, Rick, I want to show you this because then I want you to comment. This is the New York Post, number 3, guys. Protests erupt in China after furious workers demand back pay as the Trump tariffs on imports jolt the economy. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, well, first of all, what Lance was saying, absolutely true. And the shameful thing is it's both their individual greed that causes them to sell out their own country for their personal greed, but there's also just a globalist mentality that has been the deep state for the last 50 years. And so they want to bring America down in order to, bring these other countries up and make us equal to everybody because they are true socialists and absolute globalists. So that's a big part of why they're motivated, because sometimes we as patriots, we have a hard time even understanding that. Why would you open your border? Why would you allow for all these things that they've done? But that's why. It's either selfish, they're on the grift, or they're just pure globalist and they want to tear America down for that globalist agenda. I don't think China's as strong as what we often think. I think there's some real cracks in the foundation there, and I think Trump is going to bring them to heel. And this is just evidence of it. It's going to depend on how hard the Communist Party can, keep their boot on the neck of the people of China. But this is going to start to show some fissures where you're going to see that crack in that foundation as Trump keeps the pressure up, which is why we've got to be patient. I know people are feeling the pain of the tariffs and all those things, but I still say, man, trust the guy in the room. There's nobody better to read these leaves and know when it's time to let up and when to keep putting the pressure on than the guy that wrote the art of the deal.
We used to think saying we need to drain the swamp, that Trump needs to drain, that was, boy, that's really bold statement and how that's horrible. But drain the swamp is almost a compliment, compared. I believe there's more, in your words, that are grifting on the government to build their own personal economy on the backs of the United States, and it's almost unfathomable to our audience. I mean, these are hardworking people. I meet them. These are people that have worked years and years and retired. They're trying to make it on Social Security. A lot of them. Others are trying. Is there even going to be Social Security for me when I get to the retirement age? There's all of that that's out there, and then they see this. These guys out selling out the country. Pastor Hank, I'll give you a chance to comment here. This seems to be the real tragedy. This is why there's got to be a spiritual awakening in America.
Yeah. There has to be. And I think the tragedy is, especially in our country, and I think it was Lance that had said it earlier, in America, it's a shame when you've got these corrupt judges and different politicians and such that are fighting so hard to keep what is wrong here and make the real American people suffer as a result. But as I'm watching the different segments that we're talking about, I have to remind myself, and those of you that are watching, I've shared it many times publicly. It was March 15th of 2020 where the Lord took me up over the earth in a vision, and he spoke very authoritative. It was very black, dark over the earth, and he spoke with tremendous authority, and he said, divine reset, divine reversal, and everything began to shatter. And it wasn't all at once, but the force of what was coming hit the darkness and it began to expel. Lance had mentioned, we're in a reset. So what we have to do is continue to look at what God has said and then begin to move accordingly to what is called apostolic strategy and prophetic application. And I say that because what I'm looking at right now is all of these different countries are being in disarray, and it's on purpose. Because remember, and I'll make my comment very quickly here, when Saul was persecuting the Christians, Jesus knocked him off of his high horse, and he was kicking against the pricks. He was kicking against something of a higher authority. God is inserting himself over America and in the earth. And what the media and these liberals and these judges, they don't realize, it isn't going to end well for them. They're going to get knocked off their high horse. And ultimately, God is going to continue to carry out his global agenda for a season. And it is going to be powerful. And we have to continue to stay in the spirit of faith and also prayer.
Amen. And we're going to do that. We're going to pray before we get off the show. I do want to show you this clip from, speaking of China,
Purpose. I think that the smart thing to do is to shut down all the gain of function research, because you're inventing the plagues that are going to eventually be taking out mankind. So stop it. And if there are other countries doing it, man, that's something to be concerned about. But that's a different strategy.
Right.
How to know what other countries are up to, rather than let's compete with them in our own country and do it.
Game. I mean, I'll call it. That's what I see. That's all I see.
There's no doubt, man. It all ties back to all the other topics we've covered on the program tonight. And it actually goes back to a couple of prophecies the Lord spoke through, Hank, a couple of years ago about these things being uncovered and the corruption being exposed. And I would take us all the way back to the Old Testament when God said, you don't want a king. The king will take advantage of you. Right. The king will turn your sons into his warriors. He's going to take everything that you've got. I mean, all of those things. And that's why the American dream and the American value system was different, because it put these checks and balances on the government, and it said you only get to do these things. At the federal level, it's 17 things, and that's it. NIH, FDA, Center for Dementia Confusion, Center for Disease Control, all of these agencies are unconstitutional. They should not exist in the first place. So they're outside the jurisdiction, which is like creating a king. And then the grift happens, which we were talking earlier. Every time you expand it, there's going to be grift in these programs. And then you get corruption, and then you get the cover-up. And I have said this for a long time. Anthony Fauci needs to be on trial. He needs to be in prison. He killed more people, and he cost more jobs, and he cost more in the economy than anyone in our history. And I am so thankful that Donald Trump is backing RFK on this stuff, because RFK called him out, wrote a whole book calling Fauci out on these things. So thank you to Rand Paul and RFK and these others that have pushed this. And thank you, President Trump, for giving them the platform and the voice. It's why we talked about this on Flashpoint when it happened, but when Donald Trump brought RFK out on the stage last summer and he joined the team, that was huge. A pivotal moment. That was his saying, I'm sorry for warp speed without ever saying, I'm sorry for warp speed. It's just a big deal. And so I just applaud that whole team, and I thank God for uncovering the corruption.
Agreed. All right, Pastor Hank, you got a minute. I need you.
Well, I agree with Rick's point. Very well said. Here's what's happening. God's foundation is righteousness and justice. God is righting things in the earth and the nation. So you're going to continue to see exposures. What about justice? Well, we need to keep praying. That's why we need to get to the war room right here on Flashpoint Army, because justice it does something about it. It stops it, and then it begins to bring the truly guilty to a place of accountability and justice.
Amen. All right. Final thoughts, Lance? You got like 45 seconds.
Well, the main thing that we have to do is we have to continually pray that Donald Trump has at least 4 years. He's got the 4-year presidency, that God will be able to do what he wants to do in the earth to bring that reset into motion, because it's for the sake of nations. Trump isn't here just for us. The Lord put him here because of the reordering of nations, and it's pushing back on the persecution of Christians globally. We didn't even talk about it, but I get the feedback. Other nations are going, you better be chill on this, because Trump has a sweet spot for this Christian faith.
Without a doubt. All right, Rick, you got 20 seconds.
Well, hey, man, I'm just so thankful this is finally happening. We've been calling out Fauci in this whole thing from the beginning. We've been illuminating the deaths and thank you, Elon Musk, for free speech so that we could actually say these things once again.
Yeah, amen. And thank you. I mean, tens of thousands of you are watching us live, and even more will watch.
There is a speed bump on the front. This is a child-protected area. Slow down less than 30 kilometers.